There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel and another Friday Reads. Before I talk about personal stuff and book stuff, let me get a little political. It's uncomfortable for me, but I can't just not say anything about what's happening in the Middle East and across North America. The insane repression that's happening against Palestinian voices in North America, the protests at university, which I fully support. I do not believe, while there may be excesses to them that are anti-Semitic, protesting against what the government of Israel is doing in Gaza is not anti-Semitic. And the police repression is just, let's take a really terrible issue in society and add the police to it. That always helps things. The police are the most evil institution in society. What the hell are we doing? Canada is perhaps a smidge better than the States when it comes to issues like this, but only a smidge. There's a myth out there that Canada is leaps and bounds better than the States when it comes to civil rights or whatever, and it's a gross exaggeration. The Ontario legislature has banned the wearing of keffiyehs, and one of the sitting elected politicians has been defying it, and she's my new hero. But this is just, oh my God. Change is coming. And I have not been particularly outspoken on this issue, and I'm not going to be devoting, I don't think, very much time to my political views. Politics is not my strong suit. I'm fascinated by politics. It was also overdue for me to say something more than the fact that I'm boycotting the literary prize that is funded by the Israeli military. I shall never let the name of that prize escape my lips on this channel. If I have a guest on that refers to that prize, that's fine, but you'll never hear me say the word, or I'm not going to be doing any videos about that prize. Not that I do very many videos about book prizes. I've kind of moved past all that nonsense. I don't shop at Indigo, Canada's bookstore chain, because its owner has a scholarship to pay for people to go join the Israeli army. Like, no, I'm not going to be supporting that. And of course, and it shouldn't be necessary to add, but I do need to say, of course, Hamas is not a very good organization, and the atrocity they perpetrated on hundreds and hundreds of Israelis 7 months ago was horrific as well. The Israeli response has been exponentially more so. Enough said about politics. That's probably more than I wanted to say, but I've said my bit for now. Okay, so spring is coming. I don't think it's going to be too long before I'm going to be able to, if I'd filmed my Friday Reads later in the day, I could probably could have filmed it outside, but I didn't. I went to a just incredible literary event. I had the organizer on my Friday Reads a couple of weeks ago, Meredith Hambrock, the Saskatoon Library writer-in-residence and novelist, and we're getting to be friendly. And she put together this ekphrastic literary reading. She doesn't use that pretentious word, only I do. Local writers writing about one piece of art that's currently on display at Saskatoon's world-renowned art gallery, the Remy. And so I think there were 6 writers, including her. Mom and I went last night, and it was just wonderful. Oh my God, I loved it so much, and I made some connections with some new writers who you'll be seeing on my channel soon. Meredith had 2 pieces, kind of a play, 2 herons, I don't know, it's 2 birds conversing. It was very funny, and then a short story about a rusty old cheese grater that was just pee my pants funny. So some great poetry, short stories. It was wonderful. So that's all I'll say about it. It was an incredibly invigorating experience. Oh my God. And Independent Bookstore Day is tomorrow. I've saved a little bit of money at the end of the month when my bank account gets pretty low, but I've set aside a little bit of money to go book shopping tomorrow. All right. Without further ado, here is another very special mystery guest. And how delightful that today's mystery guest is my old friend. He's not old, but we've been friends for a few years through bookish social media. Bill joining us from Nairobi. Hello, Bill.
Hello. Hi.
Welcome to my Friday Reads. You are this week's mystery guest. Bill has been on my Bite-Sized Book Chats umpteen times, and now it's my mystery guest. So before we started recording this chat, Bill, you said that you're having a great reading year and reading has become even more central to your life, which I didn't think was actually humanly possible. But tell us a bit about that.
So I am having a sort of like a renaissance of sorts. I had bought a couple of books a while back, and I just let them sit. But there's a book I read last year, Ozeki, The Book of Form and Emptiness.
Yes.
And yeah, she mentioned that there's a book narrating the boy's life in the text. And he told the boy that books will find you no matter where if you are a reader and you're a claim to it, they will come to you. I've believed that, but this year more so, I think it landed because I just started picking up the books that I bought last year and reading them. And I found I'm creating this maze of text that are sort of aligning with my life. A lot of Kafka. I didn't know I liked. I read Kafka 2 years ago. So I found one of his short stories in my shelves and it blew me away. I was like, oh, this is nice. So I got into translated fiction, travel writing, and in the sense where the characters are sort of moving through without being inhibited. They just go through life, trusting their journey. And that's one thing that I'm sort of big on now. Last year, I wanted to control my reading, like TBRs, like this sense of free falling into text without having them so aligned in like structure. They can become more escapist and more like comforting. But in addressing that, in like getting into that, I realized that they were actually mirroring some aspects of my life that I was dealing with, which is kind of great.
Oh my God, it sounds amazing. And I want to talk about that adjective you used, escapist, because I'm looking at your Goodreads and I can't see any escapist literature on here whatsoever.
That's escapist to me. It's the funniest thing. You would not let me look it up because I would not think that would be escapist too. I mean, I reread Orlando by Virginia Woolf. I think it's a yearly reading now for me. It's
wonderful.
It's become my favorite book of all time. I'll tell everyone and their dogs that Orlando is a Bible because it is exactly, I align with so much of the character of Orlando.
And I haven't read it, but I love most Virginia Woolf that I've read. Why is it such an important book for you?
I'll just tell you about I think it's about the metamorphosis, right? It's change. The character tries to restrict himself and confine himself. It's a story about accepting change and not being so resistant, right? To change, not resisting change. So he goes he would say, I go for a walk and I come back, 300-year-old has been added to my life, right? Because he feels that. He feels like he's indebted to art and books, but he also needs to live. And as he goes through his life, there's this period of change happening around him, like the Industrial Revolution, because it's set in the 1800s all the way to the 1900s. So you sort of see it's a master in character development, a slow, gradual character observation. So that book sort of launched me into this canon. It's okay, why don't you just trust your shelves of books that you have and have fun with it? Because I miss having fun with book. I think we take books so seriously. It's rigid when it's supposed to be in a conversation, just loving it and hating a character. And I'm going back to that position where I used to be. And it's a solitary.
Letting books kind of jump off the shelf at you.
Yeah, fully.
I love that.
Going at it. And yeah, it's never chaotic to me. I know you tell people and be like, do you read? I'm like, no, to me, that's actually more structure than what is happening in real life. Has a more structure that is not really structure, but it works for me.
Now, do you find, Bill, that the book that you've just finished, does it in any way shape your yearning for what the next book might be? For example, after you finished Orlando, did it somehow put you in the space where the next book was an obvious choice?
I didn't know. So that's the thing. I never know what book I'm going to pick up next. But and I usually I've DNF'd a lot of books too. Some you might think that my reading has just been like completion, or something, but it's just kicking out books, picking up whatever lights there, and reading just for the sake of it, organically. And it has. Back to your question, it really has. So the last book I read was What I'd Rather Not Think About, and it's about suicide, grief. Twins. One of the twins committed suicide, and it's the sister. It's a brother and sister twin. How they detached and came back together throughout their lives until the time when the brother sort of put stones in his clothes and drowned himself. Trigger warning, sorry. But it's similar to what Virginia Woolf sort of what happened to her.
Is it on the Man Booker International?
Yes, so that's the thing.
Is that
the list, yeah. I went through the list and that stood out to me because I was like, wait, that reference is something that I'm familiar with. And the story is translated from the Dutch, I think, yeah?
Yes, by Sarah Timmer Harvey.
Yes.
Now that you've told me how much it's a novel about death, I find the author's name really, it's hard to believe it's her real name. So I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but Gent or Genty Postuma, which makes me think posthumous. Like, anyway,
I didn't even think of that.
It's a woman. And so you like that one?
Yes. And the chapters were short, quick bite size of memories. So it felt like going through an album. And I was infatuated by the story in itself because the brother, you can see the changes in the brother through the sister and how it was going to affect, but I didn't know how it was going to happen. And knowing that the brother died made the story more approachable. I think I was like, okay, now that I know how it happens, let's just go in. So I wasn't really shocked. There wasn't that shock element. So the sister and the brother, there's that feeling of being ripped apart. And like, it has so many layers. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, okay, will I read it again? But that's the thing about it. Trusting that the next book will feed onto.
Yes.
And this is spectacular because the book I'm reading is from the Women's Prize. It's about scientists trying to study suicide. I just started it yesterday. But it's about this young British woman trying to actually study suicide in a way where it's very scientific. And I think she puts herself into the text, like the process of writing the book into the book. Like I like that sort of writing where you put a little bit of yourself and the process of exploring this subject. In Defense of the Act by F.E. Black.
Okay, I don't know that I don't even know that title. It's a novel, and you are realizing that the author is putting herself in this fictional story.
So it sort of feels like nonfiction, but I think it's sort of fictionalized. She toes the line between the non-fiction part and the fiction.
Kind of like autofiction in a sense, maybe.
Mm.
F.E. Black is a queer writer from London. Is there any queerness in the story so far?
Not so far, but I'm excited.
Have you read anything else yet from the women's? You said you're tackling the long list, right?
The 8 lives of a century-old trickster, just because of the title. And
how was that?
That was great. That was like a thriller. I had not read a thriller set in North Korea, South Korea, Japan. So this woman, at the end of her life, is sort of narrating this epic tale of like, I used to be like this person from this part of North Korea, and the character. So it feels like a short story. So each section is like the 8 lives. So one life titled is like one woman who eats the ground to sort of connect with the earth. And then another one follows like a spy who moved from North Korea, now trying to integrate into like the South Korean to send intelligence to the North. It's very jumbled up. But once you hit the sweet spot, you realize that this is actually very ambitious and grand in scope. Because I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. And it would have pissed me off. But I was like, okay, maybe that's the whole point, the ambiguity of it. Maybe we should just take it as like, maybe she's a good storyteller. But towards the end, the book flipped the switch and I was like, oh, maybe she was telling the truth. So it's that thing, exploring truth versus fiction, memory, because it's narrated by an 8-year-old woman. So am I supposed to believe? But it was thrilling. I don't think everyone will like it, but I enjoyed it. It was a grand time.
I usually like books with elderly female protagonists. Absolutely.
Yeah, you like this one. There's a woman eating dirt and like folklore around it. It is fantastic.
I think quite recently you read that standalone story by Claire Keegan, So Late in the Day. Not there's a short story collection called So Late in the Day, but there's also a standalone, just the one story, So Late in the Day, which is what you read, and you loved it. So tell us why.
Yes, and I'd advise anyone to just read it in like a single sitting. I think it lends itself to that. So following the character who's down on his job and like he feels disconnected to reality, and he gets involved with this woman, and the woman tries to integrate herself into her life, and he gets fidgety. Suddenly they break up. It's a solid breakup story, but the way Keegan does it is straight to the heart. I want to go back and see it, but I don't think you can fully explain it to people. I think you just have to experience it because it's a 20-page book, and a whole world was birthed from that. I loved it, but I can't I can't physically tell you why.
Well, someone who is so eloquent talking about their reading, the fact that this one has left you feeling mute is also quite a recommendation in and of itself. I have that book, the standalone book, and I'm going to read it sooner now. Do you read a lot of stuff? I know you used to do a lot of audio booking, and do you also do a lot of ebooks or paper copies?
If I can find the copy, and I'm like it's scratching like an itch, I'll just give in. But primarily, I just buy. I'm sort of like a squirrel. I just buy books one at a time, not full crazy, just one copy, and then I put it on my shelves or on my bedside till one day it lands, and I'm like, oh wow, this was a good idea. So it's a future gift for myself. I realize it keeps me sane. Like when I'm sitting and I'm overwhelmed with life, I can just know there's that one book that you bought, and I keep it fresh in my mind so that it doesn't lose that magic. I hate it when we buy a book and you pick it up and the magic sort of has gone. So for me, I've realized if I buy one book and keep it, and I really, really want to read it, I throw it in the future. Like, that's Bill, I'm going to meet you there, and I trust it. It's about trusting it.
And it does kind of vibrate on the shelf, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Those books. And the ones where the magic is gone, they don't vibrate.
Yeah, you can see them. They sort of lose their color.
So what I do now, this is the second year I've done it, is I pull a stack of the ones where I don't remember why I have it, and it's not something that is going to come up in any reading project or a readathon or anything. I get a stack of about 8 or a dozen, and then in January I say I have to read these this year, or I have to sample them or whatever. And if I haven't read them by the end of the year, they're going out of the house. And it was a really successful project. A lot of the ones that I had last year, I didn't finish because I didn't like them, but some of them were gems. So
yeah. That's a good idea. That's the best.
deal with
And
the
giving
ones that have.
yourself a time period is also something I'm starting to realize. Like, oh, in 6 months or like in 3 months, like just give yourself time. Let it simmer in. Let it burrow in till it comes knocking, till you meet, and it's complete magic.
And to balance those kinds of reading projects with what you were saying about being spontaneous and open to what is the book that I need right now? What is the book that
Yeah.
is jumping off the shelf at me right now? So it's finding a balance between those two.
Yeah. And now I understand why you always have 10 books on the go. There's a period I did. They all just sounded delicious. And I was like, oh man, and have life, you know? Do they still like stay with you? Like even when you're doing, if a book,
Most of them
is that how you gel? Like the ones that are actually continuing are the ones that are
still
with you
vibrating.
throughout the whole day?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
It is a mood thing, and I do a lot of buddy reading, so those are the ones I tend to move through the quickest, and then these other ones just kind of collect dust that I'm not doing for any purpose. But I would say of the ones that aren't connected to some kind of a reading project, like a buddy read or a readathon or whatever, are you a one at a time reader, or how many books do you juggle usually?
No. So if they're in different formats, it's better for me. I can't read physical, like all, because that would kill me. I would actually get one on Kindle. Audio, not these days, not so much. I don't know why, but audio, but if audio, yes. And one physical and short stories. So if the genre is different, it feels good. So if it's a short story, it can be physical or an ebook.
Yeah, and
But
that
I'm
sounds
typically,
so.
yeah, I like multiple books. I'm not like a pruner, you should read. It depends on who you are as a reader. I truly believe we are all very, very unique species. Lovely human beings. Readers are
And
they're the best.
some of us are more unique than others.
Truly. Oh my
Well,
God.
Bill, this has been a wonderful chat, and I want you to come back as often as you'd like. We'd love to have you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Bill, what a great reader and a good friend. He's been a frequent guest on my bite-sized book chats. All right, I've put up only 2 videos in the past week. I've been busy. I forgot to say, so I'll say this now. I finished my taxes. That took up a lot of my week, so I didn't get as much reading done and didn't get much anything else done, but I needed to get my taxes done this week, and they're done. I put up another Zooming In chat, this one with Nyambura from Nairobi. It's Nairobi Week on Sean the Book Maniac's channel. We talked about paperbacks, which sounds kind of boring, but the discussion was anything but, so check that out. And then Douglas Bruton, the long form chat. Remember I said a few weeks ago that I only had space in my Friday reads for him to talk about his own writing. So I've edited the entire chat, which if you watch the Friday reads chat, you don't only have to watch the second half. There's markers, timestamps and stuff. But it's a wonderful chat about his writing and his reading. So check that out. That was a spellbinding conversation, as I keep saying. And that's what I've done on BookTube this week. Well, stop the presses. Breaking news, Sean the Book Maniac has finally bailed on a book in 2024. And not only is that big news, because usually I've had about 15 bails by this point in the year, being the Empress of Bailing, don't you know? I bailed on the Edna O'Brien novel that Sonia of An Enthusiastic Reader and I were buddy reading. It wasn't awful, but it was so samey. And it's the theme and preoccupation, I would say even obsession of much of Edna O'Brien's fiction that I'm just kind of done with. Obsessive love. In this case, the protagonist had an affair with her college-aged son's best friend and then killed him. That sounded really stupid. The writing was really beautiful, but it was just, no, I just can't get into that particular narrative and voice anymore. So I am also announcing that Sonia and I have mutually decided to abandon the chronological completist Edna O'Brien project. We've just had enough. A lot of her earlier work was some of my favorite writing. So many of her novels and short stories are just amazing. But I have no desire to follow through the middle period where this is all she was putting out. And I'm really not interested in her later work that is set in places like Africa and stuff. No. For me, Edna O'Brien's literary output that I'm interested in is set in Ireland, and anything that veers off from there, really count me out. I haven't finished any books this week because I've been a little busy, but I have some check-ins on some books to tell you about. Heidi of My Reading of Life and I are well into our buddy read of Wandering Stars, the new Tommy Orange, and oh my god, there's so much here that is just knocking my socks off. Much of the writing, some sentences that just bowl you over. I'm not sure that it's working as a whole for me yet. I'm sure hoping I have a better opinion of it as a whole by the end, or not even something about half through, just a little under halfway through. There's some just weird things about point of view that I'm not liking. The last chapter or section I read was in the future second person. So I don't really care about the second person. A lot of people love reading second person narratives, and I realize that I just automatically convert the yous to I's. So that has no effect on me. It doesn't do anything special for me. And I think I'm in a minority there. But this was in the future second person. So every sentence was, you will live to see, you will meet this person, you will do that, the whole 40, 50 page, whatever it was, section, and that was really tiresome. I hope it worked for many a reader. Tommy Orange is such a gifted writer. I'm sure this novel is not the best thing that he will ever write, but there's a lot in here in terms of colonialism and indigenous history, and really strong portrayals of women, putting the point of view thing aside. And I think that's all I'll say for now, but kind of mixed thoughts about it, but certainly not losing interest in it. I am enjoying rereading Marzahn, Mon Amour by Katja Oskamp, translated from the German by Joe Heinrich, who's been a mystery guest on this channel. I'm reading it aloud to Mary Jean on Facebook Messenger, and she's enjoying it, and I'm just loving rereading it. That's all I'll say about that. This is a debut Canadian novel that I have out from the library, and I am really enjoying it. I'm about 50 pages in now. It's called Making Up the Gods by Marion Agnew. She is from Northern Ontario. There's no little bio about her, but I know she's from maybe Thunder Bay or something. And this novel is set up there in Northern Ontario, and it's about how would you put it? Like maybe 65-year-old, maybe 70, but I think more like in her 60s widow, whose husband is she's still hearing his voice in the house, and that's a real comfort to her in her grieving. And it's not turning me off anything ghost-like. I'm kind of over my ghost allergy. There's another younger widow in the community who lost her husband and I think a son in a terrible car accident. This younger widow has asked the older widow to look after her other teenage son while she goes somewhere, and the older widow, Simone, has refused, and now is, at this point in the novel, is second-guessing herself. Maybe she should have said yes. And there's all kinds of other complications. There is somebody who's been sent up by some bad man from, I think, Toronto, up north, to impersonate Simone, the older widow, like the 60-something widows, a long-lost cousin, and then try to buy her property from her. It's really well written. The characters are really rich, and it's a big, meaty novel. I hope to pick up the pace now, and if I continue to like it as much as I do now, I want to have her on my channel, of course. I am a ways into Young Bloomsbury by Nina Strachey. The subtitle is The Generation That Reimagined Love, Freedom and Self-Expression. So it's basically kind of a queer group biography of all of the queer members of the Bloomsbury Circle. Right now I'm still in the first generation, but it focuses mostly, I think, on the next generation, whose individuality was kind of, the way was paved because of the older generation, Lytton Strachey et al., and I'm enjoying it. I'm always interested to read anything about the Bloomsbury Circle, and this is really well done so far. So I bailed on one, which leaves me a room, and I hope to interview the author on his latest novel in time for his pub date of near the end of May. Thomas Grattan's new novel, which is called In Tongues. The The pre-release reviews are very favorable, and I loved his debut, The Recent East. It was one of the best books I read in 2021, and I have interviewed Thomas Grattan about that, and I'm hoping to interview him about this. So I have the arc, and I need to get started on it if I'm going to finish it in time to do all that. The launch date, I think, is late May. Thomas Grattan is a queer American writer and writes some of the most interesting characters I've read in modern fiction. So I can't wait to see what he's done in tongues. Okay, so that is my Friday Reads for this week. Thanks for watching.